when Molly and I lived in Israel for my first year of rabbinical school. We lived in the center of Jerusalem in a small apartment on Rabbi Akiva Street. Our bomb shelter was across the hall from our apartment. It was an exciting time, and we were preparing to welcome our first Shabbat in Israel when we heard a siren go off, and we panicked. We struggled to get the bomb shelter door open and found that the room beyond the blast doors was filled with bicycles and suitcases and empty boxes that once held kitchen appliances. Apparently, nobody expected anything was going to happen in Jerusalem. The shelter wasn't being used for a bomb shelter, it was being used as a storage unit. We looked at each other and realized that no one else was running towards the bomb shelter. Little did we know the siren we had heard was the siren announcing Shabbat's arrival. Not an air raid siren like we thought. I'm not actually even sure if a single rocket was launched during our year in Israel. There were stabbings, a car ramming or two, and the police did thwart an attempted bombing on the Jerusalem light rail. But other than that, it was quiet. We were lucky. The actual sound of the air raid siren is haunting, piercing. You can physically feel it. It is chilling and very different from the Shabbat siren that we came to welcome. When the siren sounds, you have 90 seconds to make it to the nearest shelter. In the spring, at the end of our time there, we were told that there would be an air raid drill. I was in class when the siren pierced the walls of Jerusalem. I quickly got up and started to run towards the garage, where on the way my classmates and I were met with the little children from the preschool, adjacent to the buildings of the Hebrew Union College. Together, 30 Americans and a few groups of preschoolers, little toddlers and babies, shuffled clumsily into the bomb shelter in the garage. It was quiet. We were told we needed to wait in the shelter until we got the all clear. I remember the children were looking around, their eyes darting from one adult to the next, trying to make sense of this strange room. It was their first time, too. All of my colleagues were on one side and the preschoolers were on the other, and the room was so tense. These little Israeli children didn't know us from Adam, and now we were together in a reality none of us were able to process. After about 5 minutes of silence, my friend David started to sing Oseh Shalom, our prayer for peace. Everyone joined in, and I just lost it. I had to go hide in the corner of the bomb shelter because I didn't want the children to hear me crying. I think what made me so upset was knowing that when this year in Israel was over, my colleagues, my wife, and I would return to the relative ease of life in America, where air raid drills don't exist, where democracy is taken for granted, where the ability to protest and gather freely is taken for granted, where having someone bag your groceries for you is taken for granted. And meanwhile, these children in Israel are growing up in a place where they will necessarily join the army, and they will need to serve, because the reality is there are groups of people surrounding Israel who don't want it to exist. Today, on this auspicious day, we sit here with the luxury of being able to look back over the past year, assess our lives, be present in this moment. In Israel, it is still October 7th, 2023. In this moment, I am thinking of my mom's childhood friend, whom Molly and I call Aunt Julie. While Molly and I were in Israel, we would escape the stress of Jerusalem for the garden suburbs of Tel Aviv. Visiting Aunt Julie in her orange grove on the Moshav in Ra'anana was like a little Garden of Eden, a refuge to just sit with her and her kids to talk and eat delicious food. For over a year now, after every attack on Israel, my first instinct has been to send Aunt Julie a message telling her that I love her and that I'm thinking about her, because there's nothing else I can do as I watch ballistic missiles fall from the sky. Each time I reach out, I get a 5-minute voicemail with her assessment of the situation, her thoughts of what she would do if she could. In her last message, she told me about the Iranian missile fragment that landed in the alley behind her house. But she made sure to tell me the only damage in her village was some broken glass. She wished us a Shana Tova, saying this year should be much better than last year, that they should bring our hostages home, bring our soldiers home, and bring peace internally and externally to this very, very small, sad, and special country. Love you lots. Thanks for caring. She always ends her message by asking, "How is Molly? How is Daniel? Send my love to your beautiful family." Are you kidding me? I'm asking how she is from the safety of my comfortable home on the far side of the world because there's shrapnel falling behind her house, and here's Aunt Julie taking care of me. If that isn't Israel, I don't know what is. For me, this is what is so painful and scary about this moment, that there is so little we can do and that we feel so absolutely alone as we watch our loved ones, our family, face existential threat. Meanwhile, we who support the mere existence of Israel are categorized by those who oppose Israel's existence as oppressors, colonialists, people who are creating or supporting a system of injustice or worse, genocide, when in fact we know that this could not be further from the truth. They seek to throw salt in our wounds with protests across American campus and cities, many of which occurred just days after October 7th, and well before Israel began its campaign to remove Hamas. The unfortunate reality is, peace is not attained through pacifism, not when you're facing an enemy who promises unending war until every last one of your people is gone. And they have demonstrated their eagerness to follow through on this threat. As Israeli tank commander, writer, and intellectual Amos Oz wrote, "Israel is not a country of pacifists. We are peace activists," end quote. In Israel, peace will be a privilege hard won through active pursuit. There are people throughout the world who want to undermine Israel's pursuit of peace, and this position often comes from a place of immense privilege. They label Israel's pursuit of peace as merely the Zionist narrative or Zionist propaganda. But the call for peace and for the hostages to come home and for the safety and security of the Jewish people in the Jewish state and throughout the world is not propaganda. It is a true and fervent wish. A wish the Jewish people have had since the age of the prophets. The prophet Isaiah prayed as we pray for a day when our swords might be turned into plowshares and our spears into pruning hooks, for a day when nation will not lift up sword against nation, and we need not study the cruel savagery of war any longer. It breaks our hearts that this day has still not come, that our swords cannot yet become plows, and that they must remain swords for now. We need Israel. I need Israel. My family needs Israel. What preceded the modern state of Israel for 2,000 years was a world that has been consistently confused as to why Jews still exist. The Roman destruction of Judea sent Jews into a diaspora that spread across Europe, Africa, South Asia, and even China. My ancestors and yours didn't flee their homes because they were equal citizens living freely. We, the Jewish people, left Israel because the Romans dragged us by our hair to the far reaches of the earth. Some of our ancestors left Spain because the Inquisition made it too dangerous to be Jewish publicly. Many of our ancestors left Russia because of the pogroms, and the shtetl became unbearable. And then in Europe, 6 million were massacred. We left Africa, Yemen, and the rest of Mizrach because there was a land flowing with milk and honey, a better land. The reason that Israel and America are the two epicenters of Jewish life is simply this: there were no other choices for Jews. And unfortunately, many of us are beginning to sense that even in America, we may not be safe. Zionism is to Judaism what medicine is to the infirm, a balm for the disease of Judeophobia. So anyone who despises the notion of a Jewish state and calls themselves anti-Zionist presents to me as an individual speaking from a position of hatred, ignorance, or privilege, denying the reality of 2,000 years of excruciating and well-recorded exile. And even still, it isn't simply that the world has rejected us. Our relationship to Israel is so much more than that. The advent of the modern state of Israel is the fulfillment of the hope of 2,000 years, lihyot am chofshi be'artzenu, to be a free people in our land, the return, the redemption. Thus, this combination of the existence of Israel and American solidarity with Israel has created a newfound security and safety for Jewish people unknown since before the destruction of the Second Temple. The anti-Zionist simultaneously rejects Jewish history while believing the Jewish state cannot or even should not exist. This very sentiment is unusual and Judeophobic in that no other state is asked to be dissolved. Even a conditional Zionist, a person who might place conditions on Israel's existence, is a Zionist. If the answer to the question, does Israel have a right to exist, is yes, if, or yes, but, I want to speak with you. I want to hear from you. But if the answer is no, then how can an intellectually honest conversation even begin? Anti-Zionism, rejection of the Jewish state, is complicit in lifting up voices and positions of those who seek to destroy Israel, ultimately making me and my family less safe. Less safe how? Kids in middle school and high schools in our own community are being harassed in the halls, enduring anti-Semitism at an alarming rate. College kids have to hide their Judaism from protesters and encampments just to get into a building for class. I will admit there are those anti-Zionists who do not believe they are being anti-Semitic. But anti-Zionism espoused by people usefully and uncritically following the popular rhetoric of the day gives credence to and empowers the very extremists who want to see us dead. Not humbled, not politically weakened, not even cast out of our ancient homeland like the Romans of old, dead. In this moment, we need to reject the positions of anti-Zionism and reclaim Ahavat Yisrael, the love of Israel. There is just so much pain and suffering, too much, and lately it seems as though we are all waiting on someone, some Messiah, to swoop in and fix it all for us. When we sing Oseh Shalom, we are asking God to make peace, but perhaps we should change the words to say, Anachnu Osim Shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, we shall make peace upon us all and all of Israel. Ve'imru, Amen. How will we as American Jews help accomplish this? By coming together as Klal Yisrael. We need to participate in the upcoming World Zionist Congress elections so our voices and values can be heard from the diaspora, such that there is no doubt in anyone's mind that the reform movement stands with Israel. We need to assert again and again that the Jewish state of Israel has a right to exist, even as we hold Israel and its government to the standards we know they are capable of reaching, so that we, the Jewish people, might be a light unto the nations. And we must live our Jewish values in our own lives each and every day, morning and night. We have to talk about them. We have to teach them to each other and to our children. We have to bind our hands with ma'asim tovim, to use our hands for good. We have to use our minds for good. Ultimately, we must recognize this fact so that the world can recognize that Israel is full of life that is happening every day, full of living people in all of their God-given complexities. What we cannot do is sit idly by in our communities or the world, because our Judaism obliges us to do something. As the Mishnah teaches, even though we aren't going to finish the work of repairing the world, we are in no way free to desist from it. And when we must do it together. I am with you, and I know that I am stronger when you are with me. I know that we are all a better version of ourselves when our community is united as one. Am Yisrael Chai.